It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. Leo's off today. I'm Mike Elgan filling in. Chicago Sun-Times technology journalist, MacBreak Weekly host Andy Ihnatko is here. So is Kevin Tofel, senior writer for GigaOM. And we've also got Lee Hutchinson, senior reviews editor at Ars Technica. We'll talk about the big Apple announcements, of course, the Apple Watch, the Apple Pay, and the Apple iPhone, a great device with a flawed rollout. Plus, which is the very best smartphone of the year? We'll try to answer that question. And Facebook is under fire this week for its spyware-like messenger app and also its real names policy. It's all coming up right now on Twit.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 475, recorded September 14th, 2014. Apple is touching me. This Week in Tech is brought to you by ScottyVest, technology-enabled clothing to carry all your gadgets. Visit scottywest.com/twit now through September 22nd to save 40% off 10 of their bestsellers. That's scottywest.com/twit and use the code TWIT14 at checkout. And by Citrix GoToMeeting, the powerfully simple way to meet with coworkers and clients from anywhere. Share the same screen and see each other face-to-face with HD video conferencing, even present from an iPad. Start your 30-day free trial of GoToMeeting today. Visit GoToMeeting.com, click on the Try It Free button, and use promo code TWIT. And by Shutterstock. With over 40 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips, Shutterstock helps you take your creative projects to the next level. For 20% off image subscription packages on new accounts, go to Shutterstock.com and use offer code TWIT914. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TWIT. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we find the most brilliant minds out there and we bring them in here and have the technology conversation of the week. Joining me today is Andy Ihnatko, the tech journalist for the Chicago Sun-Times, host of MacBreak Weekly, and internationally beloved industry figure. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for mentioning my international belovedness. I'm too proud to mention it myself.
Well, you trademarked it, so you must be a little proud of it. Just kidding. You didn't actually trademark it.
I got a postcard from someone in Canada saying that they love me. So technically, it's another country, so I am internationally beloved. It will stand up in court.
Now, you've been on a quest recently to find a foldable Bluetooth keyboard. I remember those. Back in the, 10 years ago, they were all the rage. How's that quest going?
It's going pretty well. I have in inventory two different folding keyboards. One is a Matthias keyboard that's still for sale, but that's like an extended folding keyboard that's about this big when it's folded up. I also have a verbatim one that's a little bit smaller, but probably a little bit bigger. The idea is to try to find one that's as close to the size of the iPhone 6 Plus as possible to try to see how much work you can do with everything in like your very ample coat pocket. So I bought a couple of different ones that are available on Amazon, so they'll be arriving soon. What we've all been looking for and hoping for is, I think, the one that you were talking about, the one that Palm used to sell, which is the most incredible and reassuringly nice thing. It folded into the size of a tiny paperback book, but then it just, in a very nice metallic clank, 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 like a transformer. You needed a flat surface for it, but it transformed into this really nice notebook-style keyboard. And I'm shocked that, especially with how popular smartphones are and how good the software for it, whoever has the intellectual property on that, I'm amazed they have not done a Bluetooth version of this. And I've got $80 for it. I'll put $80, tape it to my monitor, waiting for the person who makes a Bluetooth version of this keyboard.
I couldn't agree with you more. Of course, we're writers. Have you ever written, or do you intend to be writing columns on a phone?
I've written a couple only when I've really been caught in a true emergency where there's been a news story and I get a text from my editor saying, hey, can you give us 800 words on this in the next 2 hours? But that's the reason why I normally travel with an iPad, and often travel with both an iPad and an Apple wireless keyboard. I mean, even if I'm just out of the office for 3 or 4 hours, I'll have this with me. But it's really intriguing to me to replace that kit with a phone screen that's big enough and a keyboard that's good enough to actually allow me to put that in a pocket, or at least have a smaller pouch for it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about later, I'm sure. But boy, that iPhone 6 Plus, that is really right within the pipeline. It's a very Andy Ihnatko sort of, Andy, we want you to switch back to iOS and iPhone. Even if we have to make a big phone to make you do it, that's how much we want you back.
They care about you, Andy, and it's very clear with that phone. And I totally agree with you. I love the big phone, but we'll talk about that in just a sec. Also with us today is Kevin Tofel, senior writer for GigaOM, who specializes mobile and wearable computing. That's one of the reasons he's here. He's also here because I love having him on Tech News Today. He's one of my favorite guests. Welcome, Kevin.
Good to be here as always, Mike. I am not internationally beloved, but hopefully I'm locally beloved. I'm going to check that out after the show. And Andy's going to hate me because I have one of the original stowaway portable Bluetooth keyboards.
Yes, that's
that folds up. About. That's the one. I have one in my closet along with all the other gadgets of yesteryear, and it's just awesome. It's a shame they don't make them anymore, quite honestly.
Now, Kevin, you wrote about one of the craziest Android apps I've ever heard of called the Cosmos browser. Can you tell us about this wacky product?
It is wacky, but it's actually useful, I think, in certain areas where maybe a data plan is too expensive, or you live in a region or an area that just doesn't have like even a 2G or 3G network. What Cosmos browser is, it was created at like a hackathon, and what it does is it's basically a way for you to get web access without any mobile broadband or without Wi-Fi. What you do is you use this browser, it's for Android, and you send the address or URL of a website as an SMS message in the app. And what happens is on the back end, the URL is parsed out, the content is taken, it's compressed, and it's sent back to you over SMS. And you don't see any of the CSS or JavaScript. You just get straight HTTP through the SMS networks. So maybe it's not even any charge for you. Also, it works when you don't have any data signal at all.
Kevin, there was a Skype glitch, not your fault at all, but it had this like really cool kind of like, it's a hip hop sort of like a
Max Headroom.
That was cool, yeah. So for the recorded version, you're going to enjoy that. That was a really cool effect. And also with us today is Lee Hutchinson, senior reviews editor at Ars Technica, and Lee also writes about manned spaceflight, as you can see from the background there. Welcome to you, Lee. And Lee's a very quiet talker.
Lee, you have
There we
muted.
go. I think we had him. So you had him muted?
No, that was not on our end.
No, I was muted so that you didn't hear me talking about keyboards. I'm muted so that you don't hear my buckling spring Unicomp keyboard that weighs 8 pounds. That
put an eye out with that.
On.
Well, Lee, you've been in Ars Technica. You mentioned recently that you've been at Ars Technica for 2 years now. Ars Technica seems like a really interesting and unique publication. What's it like to work there?
Oh man, I have. My wife has asked me about this before because I'm not by trade a journalist, right? I'm a sysadmin and an IT guy who wrote on the side for a while. And when Ken Fisher asked me to join, it was a really big career change for me. But I have to tell you, after having been here for 2 years, September 10th was my second service anniversary at Ars. It is the greatest bunch of people I've ever had the honor of working with, and the work environment is, as I'm sure you can imagine, really lively and really hilarious, and it's just great. It's a great bunch of people, and it's a great job. Every day is kind of a gift, I guess.
Yeah, you guys write some really cool stuff, and you write a lot of really cool stuff personally, so it's really exciting to see that. And so welcome to the fraternity of journalists. I'm sure you drink much more heavily now, and you have a penchant for free food and so on. So welcome to the world of journalism.
Yes.
One of the only professions that is more lowly rated among the public opinion than IT people. So that was a step in the wrong direction. But anyway, it's great stuff, and I really enjoy all of your work. So let's jump into it. Of course, the big news this week is everything that Apple announced. And a lot of my Android fan friends have asked me, please, enough with the Apple stuff already. We do have to cover certain things, but I want to zero in on some of the unique things that have been undercovered about the Apple event, starting with the watch. The watch, of course, in general, is a point of controversy, with the Apple lovers saying it's the greatest thing in the history of mankind, the Apple haters saying it's a copycat, it's overpriced, it's too big, and so on. And all of that, of course, is true to a certain extent. But I want to talk about a couple aspects of this watch, not only about the watch itself, but the technology in it, how it's being implemented, and also what its prospects are for being a popular culture-shifting sort of item, which I have a tendency to believe that it is. So the two general areas of technology that I want to focus in on, because we've talked about all the wristbands and the gold and all that kind of stuff ad nauseum all week long, is the pressure-sensitive screen, which is really interesting, and also the Taptics engine and how Apple is implementing that. So let's just go around the horn. Andy, you were playing with it. You came right out of the Flint Center building to talk to us on our live coverage, and you were impressed with certain aspects of it. But I've read since then that you're kind of on the fence. You don't have a really good reading about whether this is like the greatest thing ever, or if it's just an also-ran thing that's just overpriced. So what is your feeling right now as it now exists about the Apple Watch?
Right now, I just don't think I have enough information to have a real opinion on it yet. As a physical object, I think it's great. I think it's the first smartwatch I've ever seen that if this were an analog watch, I would consider buying it just as an analog watch. The stainless steel version with that serpentine metal band, man, that's a handsome piece of jewelry. But the problem was that I think it was a much different rollout than the iPhone rollout was, or the iPad rollout was, and I was at both of those things, and you left at the end of it with a very clear picture of what Apple intended people to do with this. Here is the entire story from start to ending of what this product is. And remember, both of those products, those weren't shipping for several months either. When I left at the end of the day from the Apple Watch event, I felt like they'd shown me a complete picture about the fitness features, but I did not know what sort of role they intended for this to play in people's daily lives. For instance, I was really concerned that the last thing I expected to see was, as part of the demonstration, is here is a constellation of dozens and dozens of application icons. So many you need to zoom in and scroll in order to select an app. I'm saying, do I want dozens and dozens of application icons on a wristwatch when I have a phone right in my pocket? And guess what? We have there's so many ways to interact with it. You can tap on the screen. You can press, because it's pressure sensitive, and press and hold down the screen. You can swipe on the screen. We have a scroll wheel here. There's a button on the scroll wheel too, and there's a second button right over here underneath it for other purposes. And that was another thing that I would not have predicted from an Apple Watch. Like, doesn't that sound like a lot of controls for, again, a simple device? I know that the difficulty is that we're all of us, the makers, the consumers, and those of us who have to talk and write about it, we're all trying to figure out what the role of a computer on your wrist is supposed to be. We're expecting it to be as radical as the difference between a tablet and a notebook, or a phone and a tablet. And I just don't think Apple really made it very clear to us whether or not this is supposed to be a device that we glance at as we would glance a watch to get a specific piece of information and then go back to our lives, or whether we're meant to sit there like twiddling this thing and just looking at photos and getting news information and navigating the universe and checking out planets. So it's possible that Apple themselves are still working on the software, and they're still working on what they think this is going to be. For now, again, I just don't have enough information to reach a conclusion, particularly based on we had access to what looked to be finished hardware, but the watches that were actually running interactive software were only on the wrists of senior Apple executives and the demonstrators, and we were not allowed to touch those in any way, shape, or form. So I'm looking forward to the coming months when maybe Apple will reveal a little bit more about the sort of software they expect developers to write for it. More importantly, the sort of software that they hope that developers will not write for it, and when I get my first chance to really go hands-on with this and figure out what that experience is like.
So, Kevin, let me give you my little theory about the Apple Watch. It's essentially that they got a long list of things wrong. It's too big, it's too ugly, it's too expensive. The interface stuff that Andy talked about is definitely a problem. The scrolling around, all the millions of icons. There are a lot of problems about it, and there's many aspects about the Apple Watch that are identical in function to any other sort of Android Wear watch or any of the non-Android Wear watches out there, even the Tizen watches. But my essential theory is that Apple is onto something that is really tapping into the future of wearable technology in general. And you're a wearable writer. You write a lot about the wearable space. And what that thing is that the Taptics engine, combined with sound, combined with the touch interface, it brings into your experience a lot more of your senses. So instead of like, here's some information going out and here's some information coming back in, it's tactile. So for example, these facts are underreported in my opinion. When you sit there and use the scroll wheel, there's a specific vibration and a specific sound that's associated with that gesture that's exactly in sync with that gesture that you feel on the bottom of the wrist. When you tap on it, when you tap on the top of the screen, you feel that your own tap on your skin. And when you move things around, everything has a haptic element with a combined sound that goes with that. And so the end result is that this thing becomes kind of psychologically and emotionally part of your body, essentially. Instead of just being a thing that shuttles information on and off, it becomes part of you, and you inevitably will have phantom vibration syndrome and all that kind of stuff later on. What do you think about that theory? Does that make sense to you, or is that just to sound like some fancy features that they're throwing in there that are just designed to be harder to do for their competitors?
No, I think you're onto something there, Mike, and I think Apple is onto something too, but I have to agree with Andy in that they haven't told the whole story. As much information came out of the event, I actually only wrote one post out of the entire event, and it revolved around, did Apple really give people a reason to want this thing? I basically said they're trying to redefine a market that isn't yet defined, and that's kind of new territory for them. Now, granted, the haptic feedback, it does look more advanced than what we have on competing devices. I love the idea that as you're getting navigation directions, you don't even have to glance at your watch. You'll feel the left tap or the right tap when it's time to make your left turn or your right turn if you're walking around, for example. I think that's where some of the innovation lies, but I don't think that we've yet seen the full story in how that's going to be applied. You know, it comes down to what do people want this thing for? What does Apple want people to use this for? The haptics are interesting to me, very much so. But granted, we've had haptics in devices forever, and there have been some improvements on that. Some keyboards have haptics that are kind of, if you're tapping on the left side of the screen, you could kind of feel the haptic touch on the left side as you're touching and so on. But I'm not sure that, the whole story's been told here. And if you notice, Apple did not call this a smartwatch, not one single time. And what we've been talking about here is smartwatches, by and large, wearable devices and so on. I don't think that Apple wants this to be classified as a smartwatch. I think, Mike, what they're going after is that physical experience, that psychological experience that you were just mentioning, and they're still working out the bits and pieces on how to make that happen without calling this a smartwatch. Because let's face it, a lot of the features, as you said, they're already available on Android Wear and such. But are they compelling features? Favoriting a photo on my iPhone so I can see it on my watch, why would I do that when I have to have the phone with me? I want to see it on the bigger screen, the better screen. That's not a compelling reason to spend $350 or much more, because that's the starting price, probably for the lowest and smallest watch. So again, the haptics, the pressure sensitivity, it sounds interesting. Apple's good at hardware. I'm not even sure about the whole touch versus tap and the pressure sensitivity, though, because let's face it, I mean, when your iPhone can detect a touch or a tap. If you tap and hold, it knows that you want to rearrange your home screen. There was a lot of marketing mumbo jumbo around that, and I'm not completely sold on that being innovative yet. I really need to see the product.
So Lee, I think you're an Android guy, right? I mean, you're not an iPhone user, are you?
I'm pretty agnostic, actually.
Okay.
I've got one of just about everything. My daily driver, the phone that I actually own and paid for, is an iPhone. Yeah, but I bounce back and forth between iOS and Windows Phone and Android pretty regularly.
And in addition to this watch touching you, Apple, this interesting concept, Apple touching you all the time. They're also going to be touching your money with Apple Pay, and this is an interesting implementation, I think, for the Apple Watch, because essentially how it works is you authenticate the watch, presumably with your fingerprint on the phone, and then as long as the watch stays lashed to your wrist, you're good to go to pay for stuff, and as soon as you remove it from your wrist, it loses the authentication and you can't do it anymore. Generally speaking, what did you think of Apple Pay, not only as a technology and the implementation of that technology, but as a competitor to all the other methods for electronic and mobile payment?
Well, that's an interesting question, and the best answer I can give you is that even if something hasn't necessarily taken over the world by storm yet, don't discount Apple. They seem to have a way of taking technologies that are sort of right on the edge and then pushing them into mainstream and having people adopt them. I'm not really sure if it's something that I would necessarily use, the integrated watch pay, but at the same time, I'm kind of old-fashioned, and the idea of storing payment details in a mobile device like that really kind of makes me nervous, which maybe means I'm outdated. But it's not really something that I think I would take advantage of very much. Credit cards are a well-established system. Merchant agreements between the people who are accepting cards and the banks and everything, the payment processors, MasterCard and Visa, do a really great job of protecting consumers. But Apple adding them into that link, adding any a mobile payment system into that link is just another, it's another speed bump to overcome. We actually just published today, I believe, a really good overview of Apple Pay written by Megan Geis, one of my guys. She's a girl, but written by one of my people, and she goes really in depth on how it works out. But I don't know. I mean, the analogy that I read online was that. I'm going to screw this up. It's like Google pushes the frontiers, and then Apple sort of brings all the settlers in after the frontiers have been pushed. And I think that you'll probably see mobile payments looking at one of those things where it's like that. Like Google and other smartwatch vendors have sort of tread this territory before, and phones too. But now we're going to see, I think, it actually taking off because Apple's going to push it mainstream, as they have done with lots of things that a lot of folks didn't know they needed, like tablets, for example.
And of course, Apple is going to market the heck out of it. We have a new Apple Watch commercial. Let's take a look at that, Chad.
The iPhone, the iPad, and now the iWatch, Apple Watch, the Apple Watch. Damn, I'm never going to get used to that. The Apple Watch stands for a pleasantly plump little electronic watch. Android's terrible. Come here. It does so many cool little thingies. You can share your heartbeat. For some reason. You can try looking at pictures on a 1-inch screen. You can buy 5 in a row and watch them dance. You can thumb something down or up. You can even set the date, just like a regular watch. Oh, it's got maps on it. Kind of like the phone you already have. Can it tell time? Yes. Do you have to charge it every night? Yes. Just like a regular watch. Sending emoji has never been more complicated. You can draw and send pictures to your friends. We don't know how to turn off dick pics though. It's gonna happen. That'll be a feature that'll come in the iWatch 2, Apple Watch 2. I'm never gonna not say that. Now you can watch YouTube videos right on your watch. Hey man, can you move? Shut up, man. It also comes with Apple Pay, so you can use your watch like a credit card. And trust us, Apple will keep your banking information very secure, just like all those nude pics. Now, a lot of
so this might not be an official ad. I'm not really sure about that, but
how can you tell, really?
Yeah. They seem to.
I will say that what the guy was saying about the iWatch versus the Apple Watch. Every single one of us at ours is still saying iWatch, because otherwise it's like, well, which watch are you talking about? The Apple one? Oh yeah, it's iWatch.
Tim Cook did it too on some network TV show. He actually said the iWatch. It's a difficult one to break, and I think everybody's making the same mistake. Although it's probably cool to see them retire the i thing. That was kind of a trend. Years and years and years ago when the iPod came out, that was the thing. People were putting E and then I in front of everything. So I think Apple Watch makes a lot more sense. And I'm guessing the next phone will be called the Apple phone. Maybe. Or something.
But
the Apple phone
I did like that Tim Cook came out and did the one more thing. Yeah. That was something that I was happy when he did it. That was that was a good callback. I like that.
He stole that from Xiaomi.
Not only that, but the entire event. I was just the absolute glee in his voice and his facial expressions and his body language was when he first started to talk about the iWatch that you could see. I saw this exact same sort of stuff on Steve Jobs' face when he was introducing the iPhone, and you just immediately hits you that this guy's been keeping a lid on a secret for like a year or 2 or 3, and now he finally gets to tell everybody about this cool thing that he and the rest of the team have been working on, and there's some obvious pride there.
Oh, it is. And Tim Cook has in the past, I mean, I'm sure you've watched, most of the presentations that he's done. He sometimes has, what's the best way to put this? He sometimes seems like he's not the most enthusiastic presenter. Like he often comes out and he looks like he's maybe a little nervous or maybe about to puke on stage or whatever. But yeah, and you're absolutely right, Andy. This time he came out and it was, he was gleeful, he was engaging. It was really good to see.
It was clear that this was his way of stepping out from under Steve's shadow. This was the Tim show, the first major product release on his watch, no pun intended. And you're right. You guys could see the obvious pride. He was excited to show this off and showing his emotions, I think, here were higher than anything else I've seen him present so far. It was actually nice to see for him.
Plus, he got to touch Bono's finger. That was a highlight. Now, he was so excited, it gave me the feeling that they were going to tell him that there was a big meltdown, that they were essentially showing the truck schedule for a lot of this announcement. And then later they were giving the Mandarin or Japanese translations as part of this thing. The entire launch has been plagued by problems. There had been 3 major problems. One of them was the fiasco for the video when they rolled out the announcement. We covered it live, and it was just a train wreck in terms of, the weird audio, the truck schedule, all that kind of stuff. And then when they did pre-orders, they got everybody on the East Coast up at 3 o'clock in the morning to order this phone for some reason, and then there were glitches and they quickly ran out, even though lots of people had trouble ordering it. And there were probably shortages in the United States because they probably reserved millions of these units for China, but then the Chinese government didn't approve them for sale. And we still, as far as I know, don't have a date for when the iPhones will be available for sale in China. And this seems to be part of the ongoing harassment by the Chinese government of American technology companies for a long list of reasons and gripes that they have, plus to protect Chinese companies, presumably. So how bad is this for Apple, do you think? Are these passing glitches that people will forget about, or is this going to go down in history as a flawed and glitch-filled launch?
I hope not, because think about all the work and all the thought that goes into developing 2 new phones and a brand new platform. And then are we really going to dismiss that because the video feed was not good and because they couldn't handle the initial onrush of orders? It's embarrassing, certainly, because Apple is certainly very known for, they're the company that says, we make sure that the back of the fence is painted just as well as the front of the fence, because every step of the work actually matters, whether it's visible to the consumer or not. And so this is obviously embarrassing to them. And also, I think it's mostly it's firepower for people who just really want to find nasty things to say about Apple. And so you can say nasty things about, you can talk about things you don't like about the hardware. And you can also say that this is legitimately embarrassing that they had such not just a glitch, but such a humiliating glitch. But I mean, even AV Club, they were talking about reviewing this week's Project Runway, in which one of the designers dressed on the runway that was inspired by color bars from a Samsung TV, and of course they had to tie that into a joke about it was a celebration of the Apple fiasco, the first half hour of the thing. That is bad PR, and that's not something that Apple likes. But it's embarrassing when you see so many people talking about things that certainly matter, but they don't matter as much as anybody thinks it will. I mean, the last thing to say is that at the end of the day, how much money is Apple making? How great is the demand for their products? If both of those are high, okay, they're willing to take the hit for a couple of embarrassing glitches like that.
Yeah, I'm with you, Andy. I think they'll take their licks and come out the other side. And I mean, look at the ridicule that we'd be heaping on any company that was in this position, right? If Google had a product launch and this happened during Google's live stream, everybody would be flinging just as much poo at them. It's embarrassing, but it's absolutely not the end of the world, and I don't think it reflects on any company's ability to execute their product. I mean, scaling demand, video streaming demand at the tremendous scale that a keynote like this gets watched at has got to be very, very difficult. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt any sales at all. And I mean, you guys are right. It might be embarrassing, but long story short, nobody's going to remember this in a month or two after they've got their iPhones in hand and such. Mike, you brought up the whole China government and no iPhones for sale there. Last month, there was something interesting that happened, and I don't know if everybody caught this. The Chinese government, a specific area of it, told the carriers, the big three carriers over there, you guys are spending far too much on hardware subsidies for the phones. And they basically said that you guys need to cut down on the subsidies by $2 billion this year. This was actually just China Mobile alone. And I'm wondering if Apple's playing a little hardball here, saying, whoa, the whole piece of the subsidy pie is going down. We got to make sure we get our share. I just wonder if that's playing into this at all.
Interesting. I wonder about that. That is a good point. And one final thing on the Apple announcement, we're going to talk a little bit about the iPhone, the quality of the iPhone, whether you should buy it or not, in just a sec after we take a break in just a minute. But one final thing about the whole launch was the YouTube thing overblown. U2. The integration of U2's album onto the phones, which now people are publishing instructions for how to get rid of it, and the whole U2 on stage and the touching the fingers and all that kind of, was this too much? Did this seem kind of like tone deaf as a presentation metric and also as a rollout for this album? What do you guys think?
Well, Apple paid top dollar for the right to distribute this album, right? I've heard figures up to $100 million that Apple paid in order to have access to the album, to have exclusive access to the album. From a consumer perspective, though, I think more than anything else, people were a little creeped out, I think, with this demonstration that they have the ability through the iTunes cloud service to sort of reach out and touch your library and put stuff into it. I mean, it's obvious what happened. We regular iTunes users understand the technology. We're tech journalists. We know how all this works. But I mean, for the average person, it's like, how did this get in my library? How can Apple do this? Especially in the wake of the iCloud scandal, about the nude photos and so on. That was a little bit tone deaf on their part, I thought.
Well, they couldn't have anticipated that. And it's also Apple has a different relationship with its consumers, that they really do consistently project this point of view that, look, we don't care about what you do with our products. We don't, we're not here to be involved in your daily lives. We just want you to buy our products and use our services. I was a little bit bummed by Amazon and Google music services, because now my online libraries, my cloud libraries, are corrupted by songs I don't like that were just simply given to me for free. And I should be pleased that, well, if you give me 50 songs and I like 4 of them, well, I should be pleased I got 4 free songs that I like. But nonetheless, I've got these music that might come up on shuffle play that I don't like. But you sort of expect that from Google. You expect that from Amazon. You don't expect that from Apple. So whether or not that was something they should not have done, it really does change the relationship a little bit, maybe, in some people's minds.
Well, in just a sec, we're going to take a break, and in just a sec, we're going to come back and talk about which is the best phone you can buy, the best one that has come out or will come out this year. But first, I want to tell you about ScottyVest. You see this shirt right here? This is called a ScottyVest Tech shirt. This shirt, kind of a jacket-like shirt, but it can be worn as a shirt or a jacket. It has 13 pockets. It has zippered seam-side pockets on the side. It has a bunch of pockets inside. Quick dry fabric, perfect for travel. I like to say that everybody who's able to work from anywhere other than an office is a digital nomad. We're all digital nomads now, because most of us can work in various locations, at Starbucks, while traveling, on airplanes, in the car, while waiting for various trains and buses and whatever it is we do. And so we need our clothing to match that. Most of us wear jeans all the time, and there's a little pocket in your jeans that exists for a pocket watch. Yeah, once upon a time, we used to build our clothes to go with our gadgets and our technology, and we still need to do that. We just have a lot more gadgets, a lot more technology, and that's what ScottyVest is really all about. I think it was last year, maybe a year before that, my wife and I were in Spain, and we were watching the Las Fallas Festival. This is a big festival where they burn almost the whole city to the ground every year. They build these big effigies, and they burn it down, and I was taking video and pictures with my iPhone. There was a huge crowd of people, and I had it on a stick, and then I wanted to use my other camera, so I didn't have a place to put my phone. It had a big special attachment on it, so it was too big for my pockets, and I handed it to my wife. She put it in her purse, and then somebody came up behind her and pickpocketed my phone. It also had a wallet attachment, so all my credit cards were in there. Everything was gone. Okay, so this is one of the best use cases I've ever heard of for using a ScottyVest shirt. If I had this shirt when I was at Las Fallas, I would have simply put the the phone in one of the 13 pockets, and I'd probably still have that phone. I could have sold it to Gazelle and so on and made a bundle. But instead, I had to replace it, and that was a bummer. Interestingly, Scotty Vest has a pickpocket guarantee. If you get jacked while you're wearing this device and something's stolen out of one of the pockets, and good luck to the pickpocketers, they will give you up to $1,000 reimbursement for whatever it is that was stolen. That's how confident they are. And my wife and I lived for a couple of years as digital nomads. We lived in Kenya, we lived in Greece, we lived in all over Europe, and spent some time in Morocco and so on. And norms vary in terms of how you use technology in public. For example, in Greece, I learned it was really kind of an odd thing. If you're walking around with earbuds sticking out, those white signature Apple earbuds, it's kind of socially unacceptable to walk around listening to podcasts, which I have to listen to podcasts all the time. And so a shirt like this actually has almost all Scotty Vest jackets and shirts have a way to hide your earbuds. So the whole cable is inside the shirt, and then you can just reach into the collar and pull out the earbuds and listen to them, and they're very difficult to see. Places like London, if you have those white earbuds, you're just a target for pickpockets. Theft on the street of iPhones is very, very high because people can see from a mile away that you've got those white earbuds. So Scotty Vest is a solution to that as well. And Chad is actually wearing another Scotty Vest device called a Tropiformer jacket.
Yeah, I have the Tropiformer jacket, and holy mackerel, is it awesome. Not only does it look super stylish, it has tons and tons of pockets, of course.
22 pockets.
22 pockets, as any Scotty Vest.
The zipper matches your hair.
Isn't it awesome? I absolutely love this thing. And the pockets, not only are there numerous, but they can hold sometimes some kind of ridiculous items. I have my iPad inside of my jacket here. This also has a really cool feature that if, say, it's getting a little warm, but you still want a little bit more protection, it also has a hood inside of this collar here. I can actually pull off the sleeves if I want. They're all magnetically attached. And now I have a sleeveless vest instead of a jacket. And then this is all just magnets, and they'll just snap right back on. It's a really, really cool jacket. I totally think the Tropiformer is like the coolest thing I've ever had.
Yeah, it's a cool jacket, and of course, for each passing year, the industry presents us with additional stuff to carry. Andy was talking about a keyboard that he's got to carry. He's also now going to be carrying a giant phone. With all these mobile devices, they don't get really good battery life, so you're going to want to carry that Apple Watch charger somewhere. You're going to need lots of pockets for the new world of wearable computing. And of course, if you have these pockets and you're wearing these things, then all your technology is wearable computing. And here's the good news. Scotty Vest is having a 40% off sale on 10 of their best-selling items. Fans of Twit can get early access by visiting scottybest.com/twit to get great Scotty Vest products that you can buy for 40% off, including the Tropiformer jacket that Chad is wearing, the tech shirt that I'm wearing, as well as the pack jacket, the Lucy cardigan, and the hidden cargo pants 2.0. Not the 1.0 ones, the 2.0 ones. Make sure you use the promo code TWIT14 at checkout, but you only have till September 22nd to take advantage of this incredible discount. And if you happen to be watching or listening to this, of course, we record it and people sometimes listen to them very late. And if you missed the sale, if you missed the September 22nd deadline, make sure to check them out anyway and use the code anyway, because Scott Jordan, who's the guy who runs Scotty Vest, said he would put up other great deals just for the Twit Army, and they feature different sale items daily for 20% off. So you go there every single day and they'll have new items for 20% off. So that's scottevest.com/twit and use the code TWIT14 at checkout, and we thank Scotty Vest for their support of Twit. Well, gentlemen, we have a conundrum on our hands, and that conundrum is what phone to buy. And we reviewers get to try all kinds of things and swap them out, in and out. And Leo, of course, buys every phone that he's interested in. And most of us can't do that. We have to pick one phone for. So a lot of Twit fans, of course, are technology geeks, gadget fans, and we're willing to spend more for a better phone. And as I see it, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, please, but it seems to me that the top 5 phones now for this year are the new Moto X that's coming out pretty soon. Pre-orders go online September 16th, we're hearing. The HTC One M8, the Samsung Galaxy S5, of course, the LG G3, and the iPhone 6 Plus. Are those the let's just start with the 5 best. Are those the 5 best phones you can buy right now?
I would
you've
left
out Windows Phone. Don't forget Windows Phone.
Well, the M8, you can.
Yeah,
I
was going to say, if you want to go that way, you can do the M8 Windows Phone version. Although I have a permanent soft spot in my heart for the really colorful, really nice Lumias. In fact, I'm gonna break ranks and say that my ideal phone right now, at least for me personally, would be if I could get my hands on a Lumia Icon or a Lumia 930. That'd be kind of my perfect phone at this point, which I know is weird because it's Windows Phone, but I really like it. What can I say?
All right, what do you think, Andy?
I would add the Lumia 1020 to that list because it has something. It has something that no other phone has, which is that absolutely pocket camera quality camera on it. Nothing. When I did my big shootout a couple months ago, about every single camera, every single phone that I had in the office at the time, and every other phone that I could get back for a loan for the shootout, really was the iPhone 5S and the Lumia 1020, and for very different reasons. Because there were the iPhone 5S was the most consistent, press this one button, get a nice picture, but the Lumia could get photos that no other phone could get. And Windows Phone has been making a lot of really big leaps. This is a banner year for it, which this is sort of like the iPhone 3GS year for Windows Phone, where some features that make it more practical and acceptable for more people are finally here. Still a pity that the software library is only adequate and not exciting. Still a pity that getting acceptance for it and support for it is not as good as anything you can get on Android or iOS. But I pretty much agree with your lineup. I would take the only one that I might not put on that list would be the HTC One, because that camera is just a non-starter.
So you guys are both focusing in on the cameras, which makes a lot of sense.
I think that there's so many of these other features are so similar to each other. The screens are almost all exactly as good as the other. Individual features from Android phone to Android phone, there's enough to, the feature of Android is diversity, so that if you really, really want something to be weatherproof, great, you can choose between the Sony or the Samsung S5. If you really want something that has haptic sense, has a really good sensor array, is very forward thinking, and gets great Android updates, then you want to go for the Motorola. So on, so on, and so on, and so on. When, for me, the difference between the HTC and the rest is that any reason that I would have for getting the HTC, there's a better reason for getting a competing phone, and because the camera becomes a deciding factor when you have so many phones that might be so close to each other.
It seems to me, though, Andy, that essentially what you're gaining is a better camera. In some cases, plus some of the other features you mentioned. I mean, these are hardware features for the most part, and they're awesome and compelling features, but you're pretty much giving up on two huge universes of apps. Is that really a trade-off you'd be willing to make?
For some, again, we're talking about a constellation of great phones. If I'm saying that, if someone is asking me, hey, can you recommend a phone, it's probably going to be one of these 5, probably not the HTC, because I think there are other phones I could steer them into. But if they're telling me that, no, I'm not I'm not the sort of person who keeps getting different games every single month, or keeps trying to expand my universe with different apps. My usage for a phone is pretty much within the 65 to 75% of the universe bandwidth of it. Maybe they could be more attracted to the way that Windows Phone works, which is a very attractive user interface. I love their start screen. And if they tell me that really this is the only camera they ever use, and they're concerned about all the times where they've gotten bad pictures, bad once in a lifetime pictures from their iPhone or from their previous Android phone, then I would sound them out on, well, what if I told you there is only one camera that has all the features that these other phone cameras do not have. You have to do some trade-offs in terms of its functionality as an app running device. But if that's not a problem for you, you should at least take a look at it. I agree that I would not recommend the 1020 or Windows Phone to the majority of people. I would have to talk to them first to find out what they're looking for.
Yeah,
what their expectations are.
Kevin Tofel, what's it going to be? What would be your list? And do you think the new Moto X, is likely to be to merit inclusion on this list?
Absolutely, the Moto X belongs on this list. I have one in my hand right here. The new Moto X, as you said, it goes on sale September 16th. I was a big fan of last year's Moto X, and I think that Motorola has addressed the glaring gaps, the few glaring gaps that the original device had, particularly in the camera. I'll agree with Andy. This is not going to compete with a Lumia PureView camera by any means, but for most people, I think it's going to be perfectly fine. This I think is the Moto X that Motorola wanted to build last year, but really couldn't because of the hardware chip cycle. They just couldn't wait for Qualcomm to get their act together, and therefore they had to put that special chip together with the processors and sensors and such. Much improved, battery life is good. So I was already a fan of the Moto X, so I will probably be buying the current Moto X, but as Lee said just before the show, he's device agnostic, platform agnostic. I try to be the same way. I did order an iPhone 6, not a 6 Plus. And I also do own a Windows Phone 520, Lumia 520, which I'll probably replace with a 521 just to keep track of what's going on in the Windows Phone world.
Why did you order the 6 instead of the 6 Plus? Is it because you're a runner and you like to carry it with you when you're running?
That's really a big part of it, Mike. I originally had the Galaxy Note 2 before that was cool, if that ever was. And I used to carry that everywhere. I mean, I've been down the phablet road 2 years before most people are going down it. So I use those phones. In fact, the iPhone 6 Plus is very similarly sized to the Galaxy Note 2 that I used to use. The thing is, I have gotten more into running with my phone. Most of the smartwatches still require a phone, so it's not like I can wear a smartwatch and go out and run and have a GPS route tracked for me, because I think only the Sony Smartwatch 3 has GPS right now for Android Wear. So I stuck with what I wanted. I wanted a larger iPhone, but I didn't need a bigger, 5.5-inch phone.
I want to ask a question. Can I just quickly jump? I just wanted to ask a real quick question on this too. So I went to the Moto event. I got to play with the Moto X before I turned it over to Andrew Cunningham to do our full review on. And when our full review went up, we had commenters posting in the review thread saying that they were disappointed that Motorola had actually made the X bigger this time. It jumped up to the 5.2-inch screen, and the resolution kicked up to 1080p. If you've got both of them, what do you think about the shift from, not quite as big screen to 5.2-inch screen? Is it really, really noticeable when you have the first gen Moto X and the new one next to each other?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I hope that we're not going to totally abandon people for whom this is actually kind of a perfect sized phone. Because it really is a very attractive size. It's just big enough, I think, without to let you really have the full phone experience without making you have to buy a special shirt to carry it around in. So I'm sorry that Motorola did not decide to keep that size in the lineup. But I just wanted to quickly underscore what Kevin was saying. The lead paragraph in my Moto X review is that finally I have a good default answer to the question, what Android phone should I buy? Because, like I said, it is all about choice. It really is about what are your priorities in hardware, because you don't have to settle for only 3 models of phone from one manufacturer. There's a whole big world out there. But now it is like, chances are excellent, probably 80%, that the Moto X is the perfect phone, is the best Android phone for you, unless you want one of these 3 features, in which think about maybe these other 3, but definitely don't discount the Moto X, because there's so many advantages to it in so many ways.
I agree, and the price is right
so
too.
Exciting.
And you can get it on
$99. I had to double check to make sure I gotten that note correctly, because I thought 100. This 199. Surely no, it's 99. All righty then, even better.
Incredible. Now, let me ask you one last thing, and we'll move on from these phones. Does the fact that we have wearable devices now, many of us have Android Wear, and by this time next year, lots and lots of people are going to be having wearable devices of all kinds. Does the existence of wearable devices change your criteria for choosing a phone? Should it change your criteria? For example, if you have a wearable device, does that mean it's better to have a larger phone because you can leave it in your pocket, or women can leave it in their purse, and you can interact with the notifications and all that kind of stuff on your wearable device? And does it reduce the appeal of something like the Moto X? I mean, the Moto X is great because it essentially functions as a wearable computer. You interact with it, you talk to it, and so on. But now you can talk to your watch with an Android phone that isn't a Moto X. So how does the existence of the wearable market, now that it's completely mainstreamed, I think, by Apple, how does that change the calculation for which phone you buy? We'll start with you, Kevin.
Yeah, that you raise a great point, Mike, because all day long as I've had this Moto X, it's been on my desk when I'm sitting at my desk working, and I'm using it like a wearable. I'm speaking to it all day. I'm not going to say the magic phrase because all of our phones are going to go nuts right now.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, as opposed to my, putting a wearable in front of my face and saying the same thing, there's a lot of duplication here. The timing of the wearable devices and the smartwatches is coinciding with intelligent sensors and software that can take advantage of always listening functionality on our phones. So, maybe there isn't as much need for that type of wearable device right now. The other thing that you didn't mention, I think, is a very key point. If you go with a smartwatch, you're essentially starting to lock yourself into the ecosystem even more, because the Apple Watch will only work with iPhones, and the Android Wear watches, they're not working with iOS, they're only working with Androids. Microsoft is rumored to be working on a watch that will work across all platforms, but that's right now not existing. So there's a whole other aspect to this.
Interesting. Well, just a sec, we're going to hear from Facebook and see what they're up to. There's a lot of people complaining about Facebook again this week, and we'll see what they're up to. But first, I want to tell you about GoToMeeting, one of our sponsors today. GoToMeeting is a suite of applications from Citrix that enables you to communicate very freely and with very high definition through video and all kinds of other ways that essentially reduces the need for you to go traveling and spend a fortune and go through the hassle of flying around just to go to meetings. In any sort of business, strong communication and collaboration are super, super important. And if you're in sales or do anything that involves closing deals, of course, GoToMeeting can help you close those deals quicker, solve problems better, and essentially connects you to your clients, your customers, and your business partners and your coworkers in a way that's like super, super efficient. Now, with GoToMeeting, you can meet online as often as you like with anyone, anywhere in the world, and you can share screens to review documents, presentations in real time together, and use the built-in HD video conferencing feature to see each other face-to-face to engage and connect. I personally like GoToMeeting meetings far better than in-person meetings because you can sit there and you can look at the information. You don't feel like you're being rude to people when you're reviewing the documents over an electronic connection, but when you want to make eye contact and talk to people in real time, you can do that, of course, through the HD video conferencing feature, and best of all, it allows you to cut out the wasted time and expensive travel. I personally think that meetings gobble up so much value for every company, especially small companies, when you don't have a lot of time to flush down the toilet with all this travel. It's so much better to just have your meeting, have this great meeting, everything's recorded, and then you can move forward and stop wasting so much time and so much money. Of course, we use GoToMeeting here at TWiT, and it's like we're in the same room, even though we may be miles apart. Some of the people we interact with are on the other side of the world. So try GoToMeeting free and see what it can do for you. If you go to gotomeeting.com and just click the Try It Free for 30 Days button and make sure you use the promo code TWiT. That's Try It Free for 30 days. There's a button there and use the promo code TWiT. That's gotomeeting.com, promo code TWiT. And we thank GoToMeeting for their support of TWiT. Well, Facebook is at it again. They are being slammed in the press for their lack of privacy. Specifically, a report on Motherboard said that they talked to a security researcher who examined the code for Facebook Messenger, and he basically said the code looks more like spyware than like a messaging application, simply because it's harvesting so much information there. Lee, you cover security a lot and security-related things. What do you think about this? Is this just Facebook being Facebook, or is there something that we should all be concerned about?
There's an old adage that I try to always keep in mind when looking at applications like this, and that is to never ascribe something to malice that can better be ascribed to stupidity. Yep. I don't, honestly, I don't believe that there's an international Facebook cabal that's out to steal everybody's information. I think that this type of application is typically programmed on a deadline. The application developers do what they have to do in order to meet their goals, and sometimes, if less attention is paid to security than is perhaps wise or prudent, it's often because of deadlines or because the developers simply don't care. I don't think that this is, like Facebook is out to, look at every point on the screen where you tap. They want to know so that they can record all of your tapping data. I don't think it's anything like that. I think that the people who programmed the app just didn't really give it the appropriate amount of security auditing, or simply didn't care.
And they also put in some kind of sort of funny comments in the code. For example, they said, do not use this feature or you will be fired. That was kind of an interesting thing. And of course, a lot of this stuff is being dug up by multiple researchers. And one example, for example, Lee, is that they're going after and they're actually recording or harvesting or capturing your Wi-Fi identifier. I get the feeling that one of the reasons they're collecting this information is just in case later on they want to do some analysis on one thing or another. They don't want to close any doors. They've basically gotten you to agree for them to do anything. With the user agreement.
And remember also that Google and Apple both are capturing the same type of data, right? Everybody, they use it to, Google especially uses your Wi-Fi access point and geolocation in order to help better, find where you are on maps. All of these things, like you also have to look at, with this particular app, they've got access to some of the non-public APIs, according to the Motherboard report, because Facebook has such tight integration with the iOS core, so they're given a little more access than random Joe developer would be. It's just really difficult. Obviously, as journalists, we don't have the some of us do, I suppose. Most of us don't have the inside knowledge on the design flow process behind apps like this. What exactly is Facebook trying to achieve by segregating this stuff out? There's what we can theorize that they want to achieve, but what exactly is the goal here? And it's hard to say. But again, I don't think that any of this. Clearly some of these things are problematic, and it's not a. I'm not a personally not a. I'm not a Facebook user. I have Facebook.com blackholed in my local DNS. I don't have an account. Don't use it. Don't like them. But
Lee Hutchinson, you are wise.
I know, but I don't. Well, thank you. I don't think that this is a purposefully, malicious app that is out to, snort up all your credit card data and have, Facebook steal your personal information.
And Ihnatko, how concerned should people be about Facebook's alleged privacy violations and the Messenger stuff in particular? Is this a concern?
Yeah, I think that anytime you talk about Facebook and privacy, you should be concerned. It's part of your responsibility as a Facebook user to really curate all of your settings carefully and make sure that that Facebook is working the way that you want it to, because they just have a deplorable track record here. And I don't. I agree that it's kind of baroque to imagine red-robed people in acolytes inside of Facebook circling around a scrying pool trying to figure out what brand of shampoo that you personally are using and being upset that they don't know what brand of shampoo you're using. But there is such a thing as corporate culture. There is such a thing as there is a message that is sent to every single employee through the behavior of the rest of the company. Is privacy of user data important? Well, not really. It can be sacrificed for the greater good, and we believe that sometimes the greater good includes the greater good of the users of Facebook. That's why we make sure that if someone sends you an invite to something and you click, well, maybe I'll go, we want to post that on your wall so that all of your friends know that you might be attending the roller derby in Framingham in 2 weeks' time, even though you just thought you're privately telling a friend of yours who is a roller derby derby team that you're going to try to make it this time. So you really do need to curate this stuff carefully. In terms of when bugs like this happen, again, it's most likely it's an honest mistake. But I also would have to think that a company that takes privacy more seriously would already have had safeguards in place to say, hey, look, if we're taking a look at this kind of data, we have to make sure we get sign-offs on this, and this. We're going to add so much to our QA process for this feature to make sure that it is not possible to compromise people's data that way. If you don't take that stuff terribly seriously, you're definitely going to make sure that the program doesn't do anything that it's not supposed to do, but you're not going to put up those 5 barricades against bad things happening. So if you're going to ask me, should I be concerned about privacy with Facebook, the answer to that is always yes.
Well, it's interesting that I have the feeling that Facebook likes to say that they care about privacy, and I believe that they safeguard privacy, but they also harvest all kinds of personal data for all kinds of reasons, mostly to improve. I think they generally want to improve the app. But I think the key point with Facebook is that they've discovered somewhere along the line that users don't care. There are a few vocal people in the press who complain about privacy violations and who really pay attention to this stuff, but they have 1.3, 1.4 billion. How many users do they have now? And the vast majority, I'd say better than 98%, I'm making these numbers up, just don't care. They just don't care at all. They just trust Facebook, or they believe that they don't have privacy information. They may not be thinking about how a malicious person might be able to put 2 and 2 together and figure stuff out or whatever, but they've learned that people don't care. And Kevin Tofel, let me ask you this. If people don't care, if Facebook is in fact right about that, isn't it okay for them to just harvest all the information in sight if the end is to improve the product? Isn't that a laudable goal?
Well, they're a business and, they're in business to make money and they're going to do that by capturing this data. Would I say that it's all right? No, I wouldn't. But I think you hit the nail on the head because most people these days, we've been using smartphones now for how many years? We've been downloading app after app after app. We're becoming numb to the permissions of what these things can do because we're just, it's just part of our life now to, download the app and go, and we're putting a lot of trust in all of these companies. Should we? That's obviously a personal choice. I would have to side with Andy and say, we do need to be very cautious with a company such as a Facebook or whoever it is, be it Google, be it Microsoft, be it Apple. I think Facebook has an obligation to be forthcoming with what they're doing with data and when they make changes. But again, part of the problem, as you're alluding to, Mike, is people either don't care or don't want to invest the time to care.
I think a lot of folks have kind of a reactive mindset about privacy. And we've been trained to that, right? You look at these corporations that are putting out large, invasive applications that you depend on for huge chunks of your life, like Facebook, and you trust that they're going to do the right thing. And what your definition of the right thing is and what Facebook's definition of the right thing is may be different. It's certainly easy for Facebook to say, trust us, because Facebook, speaking of them as a big monolithic entity, they understand what they're doing and they know that, whatever they're doing is ethical by their standards. And so, why wouldn't you want to trust us? We're going to have this app and you just go ahead and do it. We're doing the right thing. We're Facebook. Trust us. People are often very passive about their response to security issues, and they wait until there are compromises or issues to adjust their privacy settings, for example. This is, I think, just one more thing.
Andy, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say on the subject of people don't care, it's okay for that to be a factor when people are informed and they understand the situation and they've decided that they don't care. But if they don't understand that, look, the fact that this car company has put the gas tank this close to the bumper means that if there is even a minor rear-end collision, there's a good chance that the fuel will splash into the passenger compartment and a very survivable accident will turn into a four-way fatality. Then if they decide that I'm still okay with the styling of having this, with not having regulations about the gas tank or buying this car no matter what, that's silly, but okay, you can allow them to do that. I think that it's our responsibility to make sure that they know what the hazards are. Because again, I'm not telling anybody to not use Facebook. I did a podcast, a video a couple weeks ago where I decided to say nice things about each of the 5 what I feel to be major consumer-facing companies. And the thing I had to say that was nice about Facebook was that the fact is it connects everybody, and the fact that you are a great uncle and you get to find out things about your nieces and nephews' lives that they want you to know about without having to call every single day. That is a good thing that Facebook does. But so I'm not saying that anybody would be foolish to trust Facebook with their transactions. All I'm saying is that they have to be aware of this is what the company does, and this is what the philosophy of the company does, and this is the history of their company and of the company and private information. They're not evil, but the idea of protecting your personal information and making sure that you're not exposing things to the company and to the world that you would not want to be exposed, that's not a very high priority. So know about that. And then take a look at the pictures of your niece's high school graduation party, but definitely know what you're getting into. If you don't care, the price of not caring is knowing what you're not caring about.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I get the feeling that Facebook is kind of similar to Google in the sense that, there are two kinds of companies. There are companies like Apple, which have this, behind the scenes, they form this grand vision, and it's very clear to them what that vision is. And then they plow forward toward that vision. And then there are companies like Facebook and Google that throw spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. And I think that Facebook and Google, in both cases, part of their model is to build a better user, and a better user is one that can tolerate more invasions of privacy to a certain extent. So they both tend to push, and see the pushing. They're sort of like blazing into new territory in terms of getting people to accept different things in a privacy standpoint as part of their survival strategy, because you have to reinvent yourself all the time if you're in technology, and this is how these companies do it. And so, in the case of Facebook, I have an ongoing thing that I do on Google Plus with my posts, where every time they issue another apology, I do a big post about it and list all their past apologies. They apologize 10, 15 times a year for major things that really upset people. And that seems to be the policy. Try anything. If everybody freaks out, apologize, backtrack a little bit, and keep pushing forward. And that's kind of like their governing philosophy, and it works for them. They're very, very successful, and increasingly they're successful financially, especially in mobile advertising. There's another aspect to Facebook's criticism that's in the news this week. A website called QueerT. It's a network of gay and transgender people, and also people who are in drag and who have drag personas and that they want to put on Facebook as their name. They have been apparently singled out by Facebook, according to this article, and they've been ordered to pony up their identification, their passports, and so on to prove who they really are in order to crack down on real names. Now, you guys remember the real names controversy of a few years ago because both Google Plus and Facebook were requiring real names. And Google recently backtracked on that and said, yeah, we don't care what your name is anymore. We're not going to try to force you to have real names. But according to this article, Facebook is sticking with the real names thing. And of course, this is an attempt to use Facebook for identity, which is great for selling people things and so on. So what do you guys think about this? Lee, let's start with you. Is this, why is Facebook insisting on real names if in fact these reports are true?
Can you guys hear me okay? I had like a little video glitch a second ago.
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay. You know, the internet has traditionally separated people's real life identity from the identity that they have the option of portraying online. And I think it's, I think when a company decides that they want to, sort of step in and police anonymity, or they want to come in and use their position as the provider of a network, in this case, Facebook, to sort of like make sure everybody is behaving correctly and tying their online identity to their real life identity. I think it's a massive invasion of privacy, and I think it's a terrible mistake. I think that this is a huge overstep. It doesn't do anything to stop abuse. I think we clearly saw that with Google's real name policy and the tying of names with G+ and all of that craziness that was supposed to fix YouTube comments and make life better, and it just didn't. Blizzard with Battle.net has in the past tried to do a real name thing that flopped terribly, and this is just another terrible idea. I don't think that forcing people to identify online with their real name serves anybody's interests at all, except potentially advertisers who are building profiles, et cetera, et cetera. This is a terrible idea. It's an invasion of privacy, and it runs the risk of exposing, the classic examples are, it runs the risk of exposing victims of domestic violence or victims of crimes who want to still be able to communicate with others online but hide their identities. I'm absolutely opposed to it. I think it's terrible.
What do you think, Andy? Do you agree with that? Is there any real benefit to insisting on real names?
Not really. There's conceptually a benefit. We all understand how we imagine how much better the internet would be if everybody who says something had to put their own reputation behind it. But this is why it's so great to have technology that evolves. I think 5 years ago, we would not have considered the idea of there are people who need to have anonymity. There are people who need protection. There are people who wouldn't participate if they had to expose their true selves to the world. And that certainly is their prerogative. And so I think as a society, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to exclude those people in the interest of hopefully in the broader goal of a more rational and a more polite internet, or do we simply say, okay, we did not think about that, so let's figure out a way to make sure that these people can be safe and be happy and not feel as though they're excluded from this worldwide conversation, this worldwide community, and find a different way of making the internet a more polite place. I think that if Facebook wants to stick to the idea of real identity, good luck with that. I think they're definitely wrong. They're very ignorant. They were not wrong to think that was a good idea to begin with, but now that we know the ramifications of real identity for so many people, you really have to accept that this is a different world, that their world, that someone else's world is different than the world that I myself might live in.
Yeah, and it seems discriminatory in the sense that if let's say I want to call myself Kevin Tofel on Facebook, They have
You don't
no
want to
way.
do that. Trust me.
I would have bask in the glory of being Kevin Tofel, but they have no way to challenge that. They wouldn't challenge it. I would just be allowed to use somebody else's name or a made up name that sounds like a reasonable name. There are people all over the world. Like if somebody is from a relatively speaks a relatively obscure language, somebody's from Swaziland or something, and how does Facebook know if a certain name is really fake or sounds legit from all these different languages and so on? And so people, for example, this case revolves around a person who I believe identifies themselves as male, and the name is Sister Roma. So that's a case where Facebook would single that out and say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like a real name. And so there's certain types of names, maybe OMG Chad, for example. When the real names policy hit back in the 3 years ago, OMG Chad is the name, I believe, Chad, you wanted to use on Google+. And they said, that doesn't sound like a real name.
Absolutely. It was the worst. And because Google+ was forcing you to integrate with YouTube. And so the only way that I could get my YouTube name was to create a page, and I had spent all this time creating my normal account, my Chad Johnson account, but I couldn't integrate that with YouTube because of the forced integration. Yeah, that was definitely a huge issue for me, and it didn't even have these LGBT concepts around it.
And it's a pretty poor thing. It's a pretty poor thing to tell somebody that they don't have a right to self-determination, to say, this is who I am and this is how I want the world to refer to me as. And to say that, nope, we're not going to let you choose your name. That's poor behavior. That's terrible.
Now, the other side of this, of course, is something that has to be mentioned now. Violet Blue really went after Google Plus with the real names thing because specifically for transgender and gay people who basically were being outed against their will by Google when they had the real names policy. But the other side of the coin is when you have real names, if they could really do real names, people who want to speak up in public and still be able to smack down trolls and block them permanently, real names are a more powerful way to do that. And so there's a benefit to people who want to be public and who want to be free from trolls because real names. Because right now, since Google dropped the real names policy, trolls are popping up all the time to harass people with racist and misogynistic comments, and when they're blocked, they just create a new identity and come in as a different person. Happens all the time. So that's the other side of this. But I think I agree with all of you that the larger benefit is toward allowing people to use the names that they want to use. And of course, in Chad's case, they fixed Google+, but it's too late for Chad. You've already got way too many followers now to really go back and change it, right?
And to be honest, it kind of killed Google+ for me. I basically don't use Google+ anymore because I have a public face, which is OMG Chad, which is associated with a YouTube account. And then I have my Chad Johnson account, which is the one that I actually use and is connected with all the things on my phone. The page isn't really connected to the things on my phone. They lost a user, and a pretty prevalent one, because I was really enjoying Google+ up to that point.
Well, we miss you. I know you're on a little bit, but you're not as active as you might have been, and it's just really tragic.
Mostly auto-post YouTube videos.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, it is an odd thing. Well, I'm expecting an apology any second now from Facebook and something of a revision of their policy, but I think they're still going to try to have something of a real names policy. It's just, Facebook just can do no wrong. No matter how many times they come and sort of hit people with unpopular policies like that, they're still huge. You got to go there because everyone you know is on Facebook. They have what I call a monopoly on everybody. Everybody's on Facebook because everybody's on Facebook. And so I don't think people really care that much about the service itself. That's just where people are. So they'll continue to dominate, I'm sure. Well, in just a sec, we're going to talk about something dear to OMG Chad's life, which is the potential purchase, which will probably be announced tomorrow, by Microsoft of Minecraft and the company that makes it. But first, I want to tell you about another one of our sponsors, which is Shutterstock. Now, I've been blogging for many, many years. I've been blogging since before blogs existed. And if you want to be blogging nowadays, you have to be visual. You have to be super visual. You can't just throw text-based blog posts because nobody will want to read them. We live in a visual world. Well, sometimes we blog things that are very abstract. So how do you come up with a visual element for something very abstract, an idea like privacy? Like how do you illustrate that with a compelling image? Well, you do it with Shutterstock because Shutterstock is an amazing service of course, they have other things besides pictures, but for pictures and blogging, this is an amazing service. They also have, of course, video clips and other types of content, vectors, illustrations, you name it. They've got all kinds of content and 275,000 new images every single week, so it's always being refreshed for new stuff. But what I love about Shutterstock most, I think, is the search engine. So sometimes you want to go in there and you want something very particular. You want to look for somebody who's using a computer but who looks sad and they're wearing orange. You know, you can go really specific on that kind of stuff and find images on Shutterstock no matter what it is you're looking for. And you don't want to just grab a picture from the internet. Obviously, somebody took that picture, the photographer owns the copyright on that, and you're just asking for trouble, and you're also asking to have your reputation kind of tarnished by the theft of images. And you don't want to do that, and there's no need to do it. A standard subscription on Shutterstock gives you 25 images a day. I think that's the one that we have here at Twit. So when we do blogging on Twit, we can just go there and, you know, grab images up to 25. You'll never use 25 a day probably if you're a blogger, but it's nice to have all those options. You can download the image in any size and you pay only one steady price. They have sophisticated tools. You can search by color, palette type, gender, even emotion. You can go in there and say, I want somebody who's happy that's doing XYZ, and they'll show you hundreds of pictures for exactly what you're looking for. And they have shareable light boxes. So if you collaborate on your blog or your projects with someone else, you can share your light boxes and say, hey, what do you think of these 5 images? They have an award-winning iPad app. I like to use Shutterstock on my iPad because it just looks so beautiful and it's fun to just flick through that very nicely. And if you speak another language other than English, they have multilingual customer service, which is fantastic. If you want to try it with no credit card, just start an account, begin using Shutterstock to help imagine what your next project could be like and to save favorite images to a lightbox to review later. And once you decide to purchase, make sure you use the offer code TWIT914, and new accounts will receive 20% off their already low prices for image subscription packages. And we thank Shutterstock for their support of this show. And again, I get so much out of Shutterstock because, you know, I go in there a lot and I post some very visual things on Google+. And what I discovered a little blogging trick. Here's one of my blogging tricks for Google+. Google+ and, you know, the internet in general and other social networks has a very radically international audience. Sometimes we tech people talk about some pretty obscure concepts, and they tend to be lost on people who don't speak English as their first language. However, if you don't get the international community behind your project, you're never going to go to the What's Hot list. You're never going to go to make it to the top of the viral voting. But if you use a really compelling image, a lot of people will upvote just that because they love the image, and that'll get you your post in front of a lot more people because it'll be essentially upvoted. So that's a little trick that I like to use on Google+, and I've gotten to the What's Hot list many times with a little nudge from a really awesome photo. Well, OMG Chad, man, what do you think about Microsoft buying Mojang?
I think it's definitely possible. This was a rumor that hit the Wall Street Journal last week. Yeah. And they originally said that it would be $2 billion was what that Microsoft was offering to buy Mojang. Mojang is the company that makes Minecraft, which is, of course, if you talk to any boy who is from the ages of 7 to 12, he will absolutely know what Minecraft is.
Well, not just 12, man. I'm 36, and I've been running a private Minecraft server for like 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the mind share that this game has is unbelievable, and there's a lot of different rumors on why this is an interesting acquisition for Microsoft. Some people say that they want to make sure that they can lock down this game so that it's on Xbox or that it's on Windows Phone, that sort of thing, or maybe just the IP, the intellectual property of Minecraft is so powerful.
Yeah, it's really, and do you think the community, the Minecraft community, is freaking out over possibly being part of the Microsoft umbrella?
Absolutely. Now, something that's not as well covered, but is definitely an issue in the circles that I hang around in, is Minecraft is also a huge platform for making videos on YouTube, making internet entertainment. Somehow Minecraft was there at the exact right time and has the exact right features to be creative enough where you can create entertaining content on it almost endlessly. So there's a lot of online entertainers and YouTubers who have grown up with this video game of Minecraft, and they're very, very sensitive to any large company coming in and saying, well, now you can't monetize videos. And Mojang has been very lenient on all of the creators making as much money as they want. In contrast, a company like Nintendo has basically taken money from those creators by saying, well, if this has Nintendo intellectual property in it, we're going to take a version, an amount of the ads that are placed on the YouTube videos that you create. And that incredibly frustrates creators. But Mojang, on the other hand, has been completely easy about it. But if a sale to Microsoft happens, that might not be the case. And people are really shaking in their boots. There's channels that are solely devoted to Minecraft videos that are very scared about what this could potentially mean for their careers, basically. Yeah.
Now, Lee, you're obviously a big fan. Do you think that Marcus Notch Pearson is a big sellout for considering this?
Oh man, poor Notch. So, I mean, I've been involved with Minecraft as a player and as a private server admin for a long time, since the end of 2010. And beating up on Notch is kind of like the oldest Minecraft activity you can possibly do. It doesn't matter what the poor guy does. I mean, he gets stick from the community for having made a tremendous amount of money. He gets stick from the community for having, screwed the game up, over and over and over again. It seemed like for a while in late 2010, early 2011, that every addition to the game, he was releasing updates very, very frequently, and every edition, would break something, and there'd be like image macros immediately after every new Minecraft release on like, here's what Notch has screwed up this time. I mean, the guy has come into just a tremendous amount of money over the past few years, and he's done a really good job, I think, in my opinion, of being responsible with the the millions and millions of dollars that have come his way from programming this game. He gives huge amounts of money to charities. He's given a tremendous amount of money back to his employees. I mean, he's a great guy, but dealing with a very rabid, very active fan community for any game, I think is very difficult. And Notch has gotten more than his share of poop thrown at him for his for his success. And in this, of course, everybody says, "Oh my gosh, he's selling out. Notch is selling out." Well, I don't think really Notch has been that involved with the day-to-day activities. I know he hasn't been involved with day-to-day Minecraft activities for a long time. I don't know how active he is really in steering the course of the game. I mean, he stands to make a tremendous amount of money from this sale if the sale happens. But, my impression is that he was so soured on just the sheer amount of hate he gets that this is, if anything, kind of a relief to him, that he can sort of cash out and not have to, just get beat up from 15 different directions no matter what he decides to do.
Yeah, I think that, so just the consensus out there is that this is going to be announced tomorrow, on Monday, and that the reason Microsoft wants to do this is to really bolster its mobile platform and its mobile gaming platform. I just hope that, and I don't know if you guys will agree with this, but I just hope they won't wreck it. I hope they keep it cross-platform and keep it on all the platforms. Yeah, add it to a Windows Phone. Of course, it's on Xbox and so on already. This is an important game, I think, because this is a game that really excites a lot of very young people, and it provides an alternative to Grand Theft Auto and some of these other things. So instead of your 9-year-old out there beating up prostitutes and mowing people down with old Cadillacs or whatever on Grand Theft Auto, they're building stuff, and they're learning how to build stuff, and they're getting the thrill of creating things and having a social network around something very constructive. And so, I think that if Microsoft does purchase this, and again, it looks like they will, I just hope that they don't mess it up. I hope that they invest in it and really get it spread out there, because this is a great thing.
Well, there are lots of areas that the fan community, I think, thinks that Mojang has sort of fallen down in its development responsibility. I mean, you're right that it is a tremendously egalitarian game. The server platform runs on Mac, it runs on Windows, it runs on Linux. The game itself runs on Mac, Windows, Linux, consoles. I mean, it runs on just about everything.
Raspberry Pi.
But, yeah, exactly. But it doesn't have, even still, years and years after they said they were going to do it, it doesn't have a functional plugin and modding system. You've got to do weird stuff to add mods to it. It doesn't have, there's a lot of things that would enhance the community's involvement with it that it doesn't yet have. And the promise of, of a big company like Microsoft coming in and owning the IP, the hope, is that they would come in and rather than, closing it off and saying that, Minecraft is an Xbox One exclusive from now on. The hope is that they would come in and sort of bolster the development resources, add the plug-in system, help do the things that the game needs that hasn't been done in the game for so long. I mean, that would be the optimistic thing. Whether that actually is going to happen or not, I don't know. I sincerely hope that they don't come in and change the platforms the game's available on. That would kill one of the most valuable aspects of the game. Because, I mean, as it is, you go in and you pay your money, and it doesn't matter what you're running. Everybody can come in and play the same game in the same shared world, and build stuff and dig holes and mine and everything. It's great. It would be a shame if it gets closed.
There's one last little kind of funny bit of information that came up on the subreddit for Minecraft. 2 years ago, Notch tweeted his price that he would sell out for, and his price 2 years ago was $2 billion. My price is $2 billion. Give me $2 billion and I'll endorse your crap, is what he said on Twitter. So it was an omen 2 years ago.
So that's apparently what Microsoft must be paying, and they've got it. They've got many, many billions to spend on this stuff, and it sounds to me like a good move for Microsoft. And if they keep it and support it, like you say, Lee, in the way that you say, that would be a great thing for everybody, and I hope they do that. We'll see. We're going to find out what the deal is tomorrow and see if he got us $2 billion. Well, the U.S. government threatened to fine Yahoo $250,000 a day way back in 2008. They didn't hand over user data, essentially, to the NSA. We were just learning about this because this stuff was sort of ripped out of the hands of the government, and now we're getting all these formerly redacted, heavily redacted documents that are being unredacted, and we're learning all kinds of nasty stuff, roughly 1,500 pages worth, a secret and ultimately unsuccessful legal battle by Yahoo to resist the government's demand. So essentially what happened is the government came to Yahoo and said, yeah, we want all this data, just hand over all this data, and we know that there's some American citizens that are going to be affected, but you know what, we're the government, we or the FISA court, you have to hand it over, and you can't tell anyone you're doing it. And Yahoo said, that sounds unconstitutional. I think that doesn't sound right. And they said, well, unconstitutional or not, you got to pay us $250,000 a day for every day that you don't comply. And also, they implied that we will make your life miserable in other ways if you don't comply. Yahoo ultimately complied, and Microsoft complied, and eventually everybody complied, and then we led to the whole PRISM thing and all the NSA revelations that have been surfaced by Edward Snowden. And Ihnatko, this is another case where we're kind of looking at the ugly details. This was during the Bush administration. I think both Bush and Obama administrations are at fault in all this. What do you think about this? I mean, I know you're not a constitutional scholar and so on, but does this sound like something that the government ought to be able to do? Just go to Yahoo and say, hand over all the data. I have to circle back to what I was saying earlier about the Apple Watch. There's so much that I don't know about this situation, but that doesn't get in the way of my revulsion that the government can do stuff like this. Bravo to Google for having to really be thrown against a wall with a forearm against their neck before handing over data like that. I really have to say that as an individual, what I'm most bothered by is the lack of oversight. I think that we have to, as adults, we have to get for generations, we get used to the idea that the government is going to be doing a lot of things we don't understand, but which are actually quite very much in our interests, and not only us, but the rest of the country. But the rule has always been that if the government is not telling me personally about this, there is an outside agent. If I don't know personally about what the FBI is doing, the FBI has to talk to another agency, and they have to be transparent to another agency who will be secret, but at least they're not completely in control and answerable to nobody. What has concerned me the most is the fact that not only do you have to hand over this data, but you also can't tell anybody that you're handing over this data. You also have no idea who does the NSA have to tell about what they're doing. Do they have to explain to any other agency that as severe as this action is, it is actually getting results? Here's the report that we are required to file on an annual basis about the results of what we are doing. The difficulty is that
whether you believe that there is malice involved or not, the primary responsibility of any government agency is to get funding for next year and not be eliminated. And that's one of the most concerning thing of all, whether it is something as big as this program at the NSA or something as simple as the need to keep making sure that telegraph wires can support Morse code at a certain baud rate. Even after a certain need has surpassed, there is a division at this agency whose job it is to make sure that they get funding for next year, and they will do whatever they have to do to say that, no, we are absolutely essential. There's almost no agency who has ever said, actually, what we're doing is completely redundant. We don't need to exist. Here is our $11 billion budget back to you, and we 300 people are going to find something else to do with our time because we are a colossal and government-supported waste of time. That's what my concern is, that there is never going to be a situation in which the NSA says that we don't need this information anymore. There are better ways for us to achieve our goal of keeping United States citizens safe that do not involve all this sort of stuff. So if they get the budget to keep harvesting data, there's going to be a way for them to try to keep that budget of harvesting data, whether it's not necessary or not. And the thing that happens that becomes most destructive is when 10 years go by and no one even stops to consider anymore if it's a good idea to keep harvesting this data. It's because the reason why someone is hired to go to this little pump house station in the water table and make sure that this little valve is turned to the left 10 degrees. There was a good reason for them to do that 50 years ago. Now that pump house station doesn't exist anymore, but this person is still required to go to that station and look for a valve that isn't there anymore, or else there's going to be a problem. That's the difficulty of all this sort of stuff. So yes, I'm amazed. I'm immensely disappointed and saddened that this is the situation that we are in 2014, where I think a lot of us find ourselves wondering, here is something that we could say that it's a joke, or we're just interested in this piece of information we want to search for on the internet. But if we were to do that, would we attract the attention of an agency, and 5-10 years from now, we get turned down for clearance, or we get turned down for this or that, and we have no idea that the fact is that we saw a news report on a wacky video that terrorists are putting up to try to recruit, and so we searched YouTube for that video, but that put our name on a certain list that got connected to another list that was related to another piece of information based on someone's theory that somebody who drinks a lot of Diet Pepsi and has been to these 3 cities in the past 4 months, there's probably a connection between that and other activity. That's the sort of environment that they're creating, and that's what makes me very, very sad.
You're speaking, of course, of big data. That's how big data works, essentially. Yeah, somebody in the chat room said that the NSA is an American terrorist group. I don't believe that at all. I think
no, that's overkill.
I think it's vastly overkill. I think they're really good intentions, and I like to compare the NSA to local police departments. Imagine how much better the police department could prevent crime and crack down on crime and catch suspects if they could just walk into anybody's house and search without a warrant. If they didn't have to read Miranda rights to people, if they could sort of push the envelope of torture, if they didn't have to testify in court. All these safeguards exist not because we expect policemen to be bad and so on. We have a social balance between our desire to solve crimes and to put away the bad guys, and also our freedoms. There's a balance between those things that I think we all understand naturally, and which exists in the Constitution very strongly and clearly. And yet here's a case where there doesn't seem to be a counterbalancing force. It's like, oh, we can harvest all this information, so let's do it. And who's there saying, wait a minute, there's another side to this?
That's an excellent and important point. When I've talked to lots of members of law enforcement about this topic going past 10 years, and they make a point that I absolutely respect, that they have a mandate to preserve the public safety. And and this has been a consistent thing from different agencies, different levels of law enforcement. They said that we really think that we took this job for a very, very important reason. We are here to protect the public safety, and we are limited by the laws that the public decides to put upon us. And once there is a law telling us we can't do anything, we are not interested in circumventing that law, because we are good people and this is the job we are going to do. But if you don't tell us that we have to get a warrant to attach a GPS tracker to somebody's car, and we feel as though this is a very, very bad person and we could stop them from doing these things by putting a GPS tracker on their car, we're not going to ask if that's something that we're entitled to do or not. We're going to ask, is it legal or not? And if they feel as though this has been consistent. We feel as though if we are allowed to do this by the law and we do not do this, and this is a way that we can keep people safe, we are doing something wrong by not doing that. Because again, they look to the law to tell them what they can and what they cannot do. So if there's a defect in regulation and restriction, that's a defect that needs to be corrected, because that's what prevents good members of law enforcement from doing things that I'm sorry. I need to backtrack on my use of multiple negatives. They want to do good things. They don't want to do anything that people don't approve of. And their cue as to what people do and do or do not approve of their behavior is what they're legally allowed to do. So if we don't tell law enforcement, no, we don't approve of you doing this, then they're going to keep on doing things that they think is in our best interests.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Kevin Tofel, do you have any comments on this? I mean, Lee, of course, is not using Facebook, so he doesn't care. But you probably do. So your information is, I'm sure, in some database somewhere in Washington or Utah or wherever they keep this stuff.
I'm sure they're listening right now. I'm going to stop using Facebook and I will no longer drink Diet Pepsi. I can't disagree with anything Andy just said. I mean, I do think that these government organizations are trying to do the best that they can at their mandate and their job. And it comes down to, what's scary to me is that we still don't know everything that we don't know about this, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, especially if you're, what was his name, the former Secretary of Defense, the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. Yeah, Rumsfeld. Yeah. Go ahead, Donald Rumsfeld.
I hate to use that line, but it's true. I mean, how many years has this been going on, and we're still finding out such details like this? The Yahoo thing happened in 2008. It's scary. I totally agree with the whole balance, the fine line of security versus privacy. Until we really know what all of these groups are doing, I don't know that we can put any blocks in place or legal hurdles, because it seems like we have to come up with defining every situation. No, you cannot do this specific thing to us to look at our backgrounds and so on and so forth. And the internet is always changing. So to have all these definitions when the internet's changing all the time it's very challenging, and it's very scary. I don't know what kind of world my kids are going to be seeing in 5 to 10 years. Are they going to be afraid to send an email to their friends and say one word that they shouldn't say because they may show up on a list? It's very discouraging and disappointing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in just a sec, we're going to come back and talk about the death of Macworld, a print publication about technology. But first, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is I can't remember if I started using Squarespace because I heard Leo do an ad on this show. I think it may have been the case a few years ago. But I've been using Squarespace for a long time. My whole family uses it. In fact, Chad, if you can throw up kevnadia.com. This is my son's website. He's getting married next month, in about a little bit less than a month. And, they have a wedding website. It's so easy to do. He put this together. I think he told me it took him about an hour and a half to put together the entire site. He manages a little bit here and there, adding more pictures and just changing little things here and there. There are multiple sites and multiple pages, on this site, which is super easy to do with Squarespace, by the way, and including the ability for them to do their wedding registry, which he put together himself very quickly. Look how cute she was when she was a little girl. That's his wife-to-be, Nadia. And, Squarespace is the place to do something like this, because you can take money, you can sell things, you can do all this kind of stuff, which of course you do with a wedding registry. The way it works is you start with one of 25 beautiful templates. This is world-class design that they have. And once you've selected your design, the one you like best, you can modify it, add pages, take things out, tweak it, change the size of the font, change the color of the font, change how everything looks. You can modify it to your heart's content. And of course, if you're a software developer, you can really, really modify it. But if you're not, you can go in there very easily with easy-to-use tools. And anytime you want to swap out one template for another, you can just easily do that, and all your content stays in one place. Super, super easy to use. I like to use Squarespace just for fun. It's like a video game to me, to a certain extent. Go in there and see what kind of a website you can create. Sometimes I see some beautiful websites out there, and I think, I want to see what that would look like as a blog or as some other kind of website. Really fun to do. And if you need support, though, it's available 24/7 via chat or email. Their tech support is fantastic. Truth is, I've only used it once, and they gave me a really good answer right away. So that was really refreshing. They didn't throw me into some knowledge base somewhere. It's also inexpensive. Squarespace starts at just $8 a month, and that includes a free domain name if you sign up for a year. And of course, they're famously mobile ready. So if you use use one of these giant phones we're talking about, even if you have a small phone, a tiny phone, like a current iPhone, you can manage your website from that phone using the Squarespace Metric app, which is great, whether it's a blog or a non-blog website. And of course, your audience, when they go to your website, if they're using a phone, it's going to look perfect when they look at it on a phone, because Squarespace automatically recreates the page on the fly for mobile devices, whether it's tablet, phone, whatever. Really great stuff. So start a free 2-week trial with no credit card required and start building your website. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code TWIT, and that'll get you 10% off the already low price, and that'll show your support for This Week in Tech. And we thank Squarespace for their support of TWIT. And remember that a better web awaits, and it starts with your new Squarespace website. Well, gentlemen, Macworld is no longer, at least the print edition. Is this the end of an era? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely, because there's been one constant through line through the Mac community that has remained consistent over the past, 30 years, and that has been Macworld magazine. Because we forget that there used to be, the Macworld started off with actually getting pictures of getting the first Macs on the cover the day that the day that the new Macs were really introduced, with Mr. Jobs on the cover as well during his nice suit and tie phase. There were other magazines that came along, most notably Mac User, and Mac User became a force as well. I wrote 2 columns a month for them for many years, and then those 2 magazines merged, so that basically they became the caretakers of 2 different sets of legacies. And as other magazines came and went, as other magazines that had been around and thriving when Macworld was still brand new, they fell by the waysides, and Macworld was the only magazine that was still in print that had managed to maintain its mandate and its identity, and a staff of people that have been working together for so many years that they really were like a really good infield of a championship baseball team. So it's sad to see that the magazine, the logo and the site are going to continue. It's very, very sad that so many of the staff are going, because again, you can put that logo on pretty much anything. But these people and the way they work together under the company leadership of Jason Snell, that was just a unique thing. It was like the Blues Brothers band. They had a sound that could turn goat pee into gasoline. And now these people are split up. Hopefully, a lot of them have already found new gigs. They're certainly going to be doing as good work as they've ever done for these new organizations. Boy, iMore has been picking up some really, really great staff over the last few months. So I'm not worried about these people individually, because, again, they're incredibly talented, and there's already people who are not striving for their services are foolish. Chris Breen did a very nice article that basically went through, here's all the people that have lost their jobs or decided to leave over the past 3 or 4 months, and just talking very, very nicely and positively and accurately about all the work that they've done. But it's too bad that there isn't. It's one of the I guess what the bottom line after my stammering here is that there are very few publications that have authority based on their totality, where there are a lot of Mac sites where they're nice sites, but it really is all about what 1 or 2 people have to say, and the investigative reporting of this person, or the reviews of that person, or what this person has to say. There are very few places left where you can really say that the name of this publication means that if Macworld has reviewed the new Mac Pro, I know they've done it with a certain amount of seriousness and integrity and thought for creating value for users. They are not going to let slip somebody who had a very, really, really active Twitter feed, and they asked him to, hey, what if we send you a Mac Pro for a month, and then write something about it, and then it winds up being 2,000 words, 1,000 words about how much Windows sucks, and how much, oh boy, I can get my Android phone to work with it, but then again, I don't have an Android phone because they're losers. I'm just very sorry to see a resource like that go away.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the heyday of print technology, computer magazines, was in the 90s. And in the 90s, I edited one of them called Windows Magazine. And that was a crazy time, because the internet hadn't really come up to replace the information, and yet PCs and technology were very new to a lot of people. So people turned to physical print paper magazines in huge numbers. We used to publish bigger than 400-page issues. We had an editorial staff, just the editorial staff, not sales or any of the rest, of more than 60 people. And PC Mag, of course, was the larger publication in that space. They had a staff of 122 people in the late 90s, and they had, they did 400, 500, 600-page issues, and they were twice monthly. So it's hard to remember that.
My entire tech life in the early to mid 90s was defined by editions of PC Magazine.
Yeah.
That was like always the highlight of the month. Was like, oh, we're gonna get my parents are gonna drive me to the mall and I can buy the latest PC Magazine. And it's gonna be so cool.
Yep, absolutely. And it's now you
still...
just search for information and you get it. Yeah, so it's kind of an end of an era. I think that IDG deserves a lot of credit for keeping it around for as long as it did. They recently closed the paper or the print version of Computer World. I think that was within the last year. I write for the digital edition. But of course, the internet is so compelling. You can search, you can promote it on social networks, you can have live links, you can do all these things that you can't do in print. So it makes a lot of sense that print goes away. And I hope that whatever they do with the brand honors the legacy of Macworld. And, I think we can all agree that it is the end of an era. Any thoughts on this, Kevin Tofel?
It's just sad to see for all the reasons you guys have mentioned. I grew up the same way, going to the bookstore to go get the latest computer magazine. Heck, I remember I was still in probably middle school getting like Computer Shopper, which was the ginormous thing. Yeah. So you'd look through and that's, I bought my Commodore 64 through there, for crying out loud, way back when. I mean, yeah, it's just sad to see. I guess you could say it's one of those things that I guess you expect to see happen over time. The internet has disrupted everything, quite honestly. And now with the rise of tablets, people buying digital editions of their magazines, that's putting pressure on all these print publications as such. But you still don't want to see it for certain brands. And this is just one of those brands that it just kind of, tears at your heart.
Are you guys particularly galled by the fact that this staff cut took place the day after the entire staff went and killed themselves doing bang-up coverage on this gigantic Apple event that happened? I mean, it just seems so... maybe it's not unexpected. I've worked at enough big companies to know that, the bottom line is the bottom line. But man, that just stinks.
I'll just say that wouldn't have been too bad if the Beatles had never been able to get on that rooftop and play together in public one last time. Yeah. So I hope they don't feel abused, but I'm glad that they were able to go out with one last emphatic concert that shows here is what this band can do, and here's how badly we're going to miss them.
That's a great way to put it, Andy.
Although they would have had to have they should have known that this was happening. That would have been a better way to do it. They could also have networked at the event, looking for other jobs. Well, if you missed any Twitch shows this week, you blew it. And I think, Chad, do we have a list of the things that here's what you missed this week if you didn't see all the Twitch shows?
Hello.
Get down and out.
Previously on Twit. Triangulation.
Dr. Drew. He's an actual doctor. He doesn't just play one on TV. You still practice?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I'm doing some practicing right now while we're on the air here.
Twit Live specials.
Apple Pay is easy, it's secure, and it's private.
That's a lot more secure than even a chip and pin system. Now, this is perhaps more important from Apple's point of view than anything else.
Absolutely.
Matt Break Weekly.
Andy is in Cupertino, eyes bulging with the Apple Watch.
The resolution on the screen is fantastic. You really have to strain your eyes to see any pixels whatsoever.
Gizwiz.
Do you remember, seeing your first transistor radio?
But I remember saying to my friend Ben, that kite thing, I said, you need a bigger kite.
Marketing Mavericks.
Malaysia Airlines, which just went through 2 major air disasters, ran
he's in a bunker.
That was the ultimate bucket list. I think this was such an incredible failure.
Twit. All your favorite podcasts from the 80s, 90s, and today.
I am so excited.
Oh! No! The only view live from the Flint Center is our own camera.
Unbelievable.
I was wondering who was up on the parking garage. I saw those cameras at the event. I didn't know who it was. Now I know.
It was Batman, and we sent him there with a camera. Well, nice. that was the week gone by. Coming up this week, Google has a big press event in India. It looks like it's going to be a big Android One launch. Android One, of course, is their phone platform for emerging markets. Also, tomorrow, Monday, the GamesBeat event kicks off in San Francisco. They'll last for a couple of days. And Adobe reports earnings on Tuesday. Tune in to Tech News Today and Tech News Tonight for all of our coverage there. And that is Tech that is This Week in Tech, Twit. And I want to thank Andy Ihnatko of the Chicago Sun-Times for coming in today and sharing his brilliant insights and unique humor. Thank you so much, Andy Ihnatko.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, really appreciate it. And also Kevin Tofel, senior writer at GigaOM. Thank you for coming on the show. Kevin, what did you think? This is your first time on the show.
Yeah, it's a bit of a marathon compared to the other shows, but well worth it.
Yeah, on Tech News Today, we bring you in for a single story that you wrote. We grill you like we're interrogating you, and then we send you packing. This show's much more of a different conversation, but I thank you for coming on Twit today.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, and Lee Hutchinson, also a first-timer on Twit, I believe. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights.
Thanks for having, guys. It's always fun talking to y'all, and this is a little change of pace, but quite fun.
Yeah, and I hope to have you all on Tech News Today sometime very, very soon. And again, I want to thank Andy, Kevin, and Lee, and thanks to all of you for showing up today, and thank you for all of you for tuning in. And so I get to say the magic words. Another Twit is in the can. All right, golf clap.
Doing the twit, baby.